This hour of news and views is sponsored by African Muslims Agency. African Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years in Africa and beyond. We'll be focusing on a topic that I think has been one that has been a focus for, well, all South Africans. I think by now every South African has mentioned the GNU at least once in their day. And we'll be speaking in a bit to Verashni Pillay about the potential deadlock in the negotiations of the Government of National Unity, which have resulted in the delay in cabinet membership and announcements, and might ultimately also force the ANC to call an urgent National Executive Committee meeting to discuss the latest developments. Verashni is the founder of explain.co.za and also an award-winning South African journalist and editor. Good morning, Verashni. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
First and foremost, I think by today, everyone expected that we should be having a cabinet. President Ramaphosa should have, announced all of the ministers that should be in cabinet by now. But there seems to be a deadlock between the ANC and the DA, who make up the bulk of this GNU. From your understanding, what were the initial agreements between the ANC and the DA regarding the allocation of ministerial portfolios? And could there be a potential breakdown of this GNU?
Great question. So yeah, the original coalition agreement was done in such high pressured circumstances that the two parties that were the main signatories, or the three parties that are the IFP, DA and ANC, didn't have much time to hammer out the basics or the details. They just wanted to get the president into place and the parliament speaker into place. That was the big deadline. If we hadn't done that within 2 weeks after the election, we would have had to go to a re-election. So they really were very much focused on that. All the kind of negotiating and back and forth around positions. So there was no real understanding, I think, between those parties. I think the ANC really thought it was their prerogative to decide. And I think the DA had a different idea. Now, there was a statement of intent that was signed between these parties. The statement of intent talks about proportional representation. And there is a difference now between the ANC and DA as to how they are interpreting that clause. The DA feels it should be proportional to their representation within the Government of National Unity, which would be 30% and about, I guess, around 10 posts. And the ANC think it should be proportional to their vote in Parliament, 20%.
I want us now to focus on, the horse trading that's been happening, particularly the significance of, that demand of 11 ministerial portfolios by the Democratic Alliance and how it has impacted the negotiations. Could this be that vital moment, where we see the breakdown of this GNU and ultimately the ANC, deciding that, maybe going the route of the ANC IFP was not the right decision, and leaning more to what a lot of people expected, to be the case, which would be the MK EFF coalition. We saw members of the MK party yesterday being sworn in. The 11 portfolios, are they the make it, break it factor to this GNU?
So there's two parts to that question. The first part is the MK party and whether the ANC would go into coalition with them. I think that is highly unlikely. That would be catastrophic for our economy. Regardless of what you think about the MK party, the markets have a very certain view of the MK party. They feel that they'd be bad. Investors would pull out, the economy would tank. That's just a fact, whether you like the MK party or not, right? The ANC is very unlikely to do that. They have so many other options if the DA pull out. They have other parties, about 10 other parties, 10 parties in total that have joined the GNU that give them 200 seats in parliament. They just need one more seat. Apparently the UAT is thinking of joining them. That's one seat. Then they would have a majority, even if the DA pulled out. Granted, that would be an extremely unstable coalition with 11 parties in total. But they don't have to go with the EFF or MK party. They have other parties to go with. They could also do a confidence and supply arrangement with the DA, where the DA just puts in the president and speaker, as they have already done, and just passes the budget. That's the supply part of the confidence and supply arrangement. And then the DA doesn't do anything else with the ANC. They don't get into bed with them in cabinet. They hold them to account in parliament. That's also an option. The second part of your
mm,
question was, is the 11 ministries that the DA is demanding the make or break? I think it's not just that. I think the way Helen Zille phrased it in the letter that was leaked, that the DA have now said is a legitimate letter, she said, these are the ministries we're interested in. I didn't really see her saying, we want all 11 of them. She was kind of noting this is what they're interested in. I think the make or break is a couple of things. One, the number of ministries. That's a lot. That's 11 out of 30, right? The ANC saying that they actually offered 6, which I don't think is that bad, actually. And the DA asking to review all tenders and appoint director generals. I think those two are very high asks. And that John Steenhuisen must either be a deputy president or a minister in the presidency, which is also a very senior role. So I think all of that together is making for a very tough ask.
mm, mm. I want us to focus on, Helen Zille. She's seemingly the protagonist of these negotiations, and the approach of, how they went about, negotiating with the ANC. It's seemingly very disrespectful, in putting it in simpler terms, of for the ANC. It seems like the DA understands that the ANC is coming in with, although the ANC doesn't want to admit it, with cap in hand, and wanting this to work. It seems the ANC needs the government of national unity to work more than, the DA needs to. The approach of the Democratic Alliance, we've seen they've been doing interviews where there's also a provincial level, in Gauteng, where even the language that they use is one that's very dismissive of the ANC. It makes out the ANC to be the ones that are not necessarily understanding the terms and conditions of the GNU. Why isn't there kind of like a respect,
Yes.
trying to reach a common understanding with the ANC, but rather coming in so pompous and gloating,
Yes.
in these negotiations? It's really mind-boggling, because when
It
you
is.
mention that government of national unity, one is expecting something that would reflect 1994, where everyone is coming in, common understanding and respect of each other, trying to reach a consensus for the greater good of the nation. But there seems to be, the opposite, particularly when it comes to the DA. Why do you think they're approaching these negotiations this way?
Quite frankly, I think the DA has no EQ as a party. And I think that's the reason they're stuck at 20%. They might want to gloat about having maintained their vote share, but it's embarrassing the amount of money and resources that party has to still be at 22% of the vote. When the ANC has basically given you a victory, the ANC has done so badly, you should have been able to grow your vote. And the reason you haven't is because of your lack of EQ. You're in a country that has a very particular culture when it comes to how we talk to each other, and you keep not realizing that. Like, the ANC is very smart in how they've done their negotiations. Have you seen them on every radio station and TV talking badly about the DA? I haven't heard any ANC person talk very badly about the DA. The worst thing I heard was Panyaza Lucifi saying the negotiations were annoying. Now, everyone's quoted him out of context to say he thought the DA was annoying. He didn't say that. He said the negotiations are annoying. And I admit, I would not want to be stuck in a room with any of those people for as many days. So, I absolutely agree with you. I think the DA has come across as so arrogant. And I think this is the problem with the DA. Helen Zille also is too involved. Is John Steenhuisen the leader of the party or not? It's very confusing. And I think they're overplaying their hand. And maybe that's their plan. Maybe their plan is to stay a 20% party and to get into government through the back door, through a coalition. Maybe they know they're never going to grow their vote because they keep alienating South Africans with their arrogance. Maybe they're right to be so heavy-handed in their negotiations, but then keep it private. If I'm negotiating with you for a salary, I'm going to go in at an arrogant number, right? And then you're going to go in at a lower number and we'll settle somewhere in the middle. I'm not going to advertise what my arrogant number is. Everyone's going to think that I'm so full of myself, right? It's a private thing. They should have kept this thing private.
And I think right now, I think what all South Africans are starting to be concerned about is the formation of cabinet. It's highly unlikely that there might be an announcement this week. I think that's what a lot of pundits, a lot of political analysts were expecting, that it's the inauguration happened last week. We're now in the second week. I mean, even coming to the end of the second week, there aren't any announcements, but just the impact thereof, the impact that there's no cabinet that has been announced. Well, the markets are seemingly happy that the DA and ANC have gotten in this coalition, but with regards to service delivery on the ground, the appointments of ministers, what impact will that have? You can't have whole ministers being run by director generals. At the end of the day, you're
Yeah,
going to need leaders. Work needs to start being done, and there's a
absolutely.
delay in that. What impact is this having on the day-to-day running of government essentially in the country?
Thank you for that question. I'm going to have to apologize because my battery is dying. So this is my last
Yeah,
answer.
no
But I
worries.
think it has huge impact. You see the RAND strengthened off the back of the GNU announcement and the cabinet, I mean, and the inauguration. And now that RAND has weakened again, of course, many other global factors affect it. But you know that markets are watching this because Invicta, which is Christo Visa's company, huge, was actually disinvesting like many other companies from South Africa. Not just disinvesting, maybe keeping a footprint here, but looking to spread globally because they're not so sure about South Africa's long-term prospects. They said now going to expand in South Africa after the announcement. You can bet that those decisions are being put on hold until we see what cabinet is being announced and whether the DA is going to stay.
Thank you so much, Verashni, for giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it. I'm sure,
Thank
as
you.
the story unfolds a bit more, we'll be catching up with you to have a more in-depth, dissecting of government. If it's, I don't know, maybe next week, next week, we'll see. Starting
Sure.
kick. But thank
Happy
you
to
so
do
much for giving us
so.
your time.
Thank
Thank you for giving us
you.
your time.
Bye.
Really appreciate it. That is Verashni Pillay, the journalist and also the founder of Oh, I just lost my footing there. The founder of Explain.co.za. She's an award-winning South African journalist and editor, just giving us insight if there could be the ultimate breakdown of the GNU. And one thing that's really, really been outstanding for me is the fact that the Democratic Alliance has been very, very heavy-handed with their demands. They are pompous. They are the ones essentially, leading all of these negotiations, and the ANC must just fold. And I think, knowing and understanding the ANC and just how much they also, respect themselves and their organization, never mind, what's been said, this is still the organization of Nelson Mandela. There's still the organization of Oliver Reginald Tambo. And for them to be pushed around and to be slapped around by the Democratic Alliance and Helen Ziller, as it has been the case since the formation of this GNU, I think there could be a breaking point. This is not something that we want to see. We want to see stability. We want to see a formation of cabinet, at least, before all of the breakdown in negotiations of the GNU. But it's starting to feel like the ANC is getting annoyed. It's starting to feel like they can't take the punches anymore, particularly, that have been thrown at them in public platforms by the Democratic Alliance. So really, really interesting times ahead. Well, we do pray that there'll be an announcement of cabinet and the country could start moving. But yeah, I think as things stand, we might not have cabinet before the end of the week. We hope at least by Friday there could be some sort of announcement by the presidency, because the country can't run itself. You need ministers. You need the Minister of Finance. You need the Minister of Health. You need the Minister of Education. People need to start working, and we can't be held at ransom by all of these political parties and their demands. We just want to start see the country working and having some resemblance of what's normal. But hey, it's the uncharted waters of coalition politics, and if what we've seen in metros has anything to go about it, we are in for a very, very long and very, very tumultuous roller coaster ride. And we'll be here, Salam Media, to give you all the latest and all that you need to know when it comes to the GNU and what it has to offer you as a South African, who I think by now you're kind of heartful of all the negotiations and horse trading, and you need to start seeing a picture of who's going to be the government of South Africa for the next 5 years. We've come to the end of today's edition of News and Views. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in and being part of it this morning. And also a heartfelt thank you to our incredible team made out of Nasrin Naidu, she's our senior producer, and Kolani Abdul Salam Dwandu, our technical producer. Their hard work and dedication are what makes this show possible. Remember, our discussions are only as impactful as the actions we take and the conversations we continue in our daily lives. We'll be with you tomorrow. Join us again for another round of in-depth discussions and the latest updates from the globe. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and take care. I'm Sulailo Makwidira signing off. News and Views. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.